Okay, I declare open this hearing of the Senate Finance and Public Administration Legislation Committee into the 2025-26 supplementary budget estimates. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. The committee has set Thursday the 6th of November 2025 as the date by which senators are to submit written questions on notice, and Friday the 28th of November 2025 is the date for return of answers to questions taken on notice. At this point, we have not adjusted those from the dates from Friday. If anyone has an issue with that, I'm happy to look at that. But just in terms of getting the answers back before we go on to the subsequent estimates hearings in December. The committee proceedings today will consist of the Department of Parliamentary Services and the Parliamentary Service Commissioner as listed on the program. Under Standing Order 26, the committee must take all evidence in public session. This includes answers to questions on notice. I do remind all witnesses that in giving evidence to the committee, they are protected by parliamentary privilege. It is unlawful for anyone to threaten or disadvantage a witness on account of evidence given to a committee, and as such, action may be treated by the Senate as a contempt. It is also a contempt to give false or misleading evidence. The Senate has endorsed the following test of relevance for questions at estimates hearings. There's any question going to the operations or financial position of the departments and agencies which are seeking funds and estimates are relevant questions for the purpose of hearings. I remind officers that the Senate has resolved that there are no areas in connection with the expenditure of public funds where any person has discretion to withhold details or explanations from the Parliament or its committees unless the Parliament has expressly provided otherwise. The Senate has resolved also that an officer of a department of the Commonwealth should not be asked to give opinions on matters of policy and should be given reasonable opportunity to refer questions asked of this officer to superior officers or to a minister. This resolution does not preclude questions asking for explanations of policies or factual questions about when and how policies were adopted. Witnesses are reminded of the Senate order specifying the process by which a claim of public interest immunity should be raised, and I incorporate the public immunity statement into the Hansard. I remind senators of their obligations under the Behaviour Code for Australian parliamentarians to treat witnesses with dignity, courtesy, fairness and respect, and as is my usual practice, I've provided copies of the code in the room for your reference. An officer called to answer a question for the first time should state their full name and the capacity in which they appear. I welcome the President, the Honourable Sue Lyons, and Ms Jai Hinchcliffe, Secretary, and other officers of the Department of Parliamentary Services. I also welcome Dr Banerjee, Acting Parliamentary Services Commissioner, and other officers from his department. President, would you care to make an opening statement?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Before the Department of Parliamentary Services officials and I answer your questions today, I'd like to make a brief statement. This committee has heard evidence from departmental officials in relation to Dr Fiona Ruffley's independent investigation into the incentive to retire payment provided to a former Deputy Secretary and the related investigation being conducted by the National Anti-Corruption Commission. The committee has also heard evidence as to the data search that was required to aid these investigations. Alongside original questioning from the Speaker and I in our roles as presiding officers, I do note the concerns of this committee and our parliamentary colleagues in relation to the storage of parliamentary data. I reassure parliamentarians that the Speaker and I take our responsibility to the Parliament seriously. I can assure parliamentarians that we believe this data was handled appropriately to aid the independent investigation and the related National Anti-Corruption Commission investigation. The Speaker and I have now formally requested that this data be returned to the Australian Parliament. Further, we have requested that DPS and the clerks agree on a procedure for the return, handling and storage of this data within the Parliament. We have requested this procedure is approved by the presiding officers before any further action is taken, and I table the letter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, President. Ms Hinchcliffe, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Jarla Hinchcliffe, Secretary of the Department of Parliamentary Service. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Earlier this afternoon, I provided a letter to the committee containing information on data searches authorised or undertaken by the department to assist in the fact-finding investigation undertaken by Dr Fiona Ruffley SC about an incentive to retire payment made to a former Deputy Secretary. In that letter, I also provided the answers that I could to 3 questions taken on notice during the committee's hearing last Friday about the data searches authorised or undertaken to support Dr Ruffley's investigation. In my letter, I noted that I had sought advice from the National Anti-Corruption Commission about whether the search terms provided to support Dr Ruffley's investigation could be disclosed by the committee. Subsequent to the dispatch of my letter, the NAC has advised that it is of the view that the disclosure by DPS of some of the search terms used to identify data relevant to Dr Ruffley's fact-finding investigation would not prejudice the NAC investigation, provided that it was also made clear to the committee that the terms used are relevant to Dr Ruffley's investigation and not to the related NAC investigation. The NAC has further advised that it would be concerned if the names of DPS employees, with the exception of the then Secretary and the then Deputy Secretary, were included in the search terms disclosed to the committee, as this may prejudice its investigation. Accordingly, I provide the following document which sets out the search terms provided to DPS ICT on the 21st of June 2024 and the 22nd of August 2024. The search terms that identify DPS employees other than the then Secretary and the then Deputy Secretary and an APS employee are not included. I and the senior executives of the department are now available to answer any questions, and I will table that statement and the attached document.
Thank you. And I will note that we have published various pieces of correspondence that have come in since we last met on Friday. Just for complete transparency, they're all available, and we will publish the further material that you have just provided us with. Dr Banerjee, do you have an opening statement?
No, thank you, Chair.
We will now go directly to questions, and we'll start with Senator McGrath.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody coming along this evening. And at the crux of this, I would like to remind everybody it's to do with the protection of parliamentary privilege. And Secretary, I do have your letter here with today's date, and we have a number of questions from the coalition in relation to the supply of information to the law firm and to their contractor. I do not note your advice in there, but we're not, at this particular point in time, we're not concerned about the information that was supplied to Dr Ruffley. It is to the law firm and to their subcontractor. So my first question goes to that there's been some media reporting that the ICT team within DPS had concerns about the provision of emails to the lawyers and their IT contractor because they're outside of the APH system. And you sort of touched upon this in the letter. Is that correct?
So, Senator, I was provided with a draft risk assessment by the ICT team on I think it was the 4th of September, and then had a conversation with the former Chief Information Officer on the 5th of September about the contents of that draft risk assessment. The draft risk assessment went to both the removal of data from the APH system and also went to the security of HWLEs, given their previous data breach. I had discussions with the former Chief Information Officer about the proposed data extraction which was the data extraction that I'd authorised on the 22nd of August, which was a bulk data extraction from several DPS employees' mailboxes for it to then be taken off-site to be searched. We agreed that we would split that into two parts, that there were some DPS employees' data that could be extracted on bulk for it to be then searched outside of the system, and that DPS ICT would then conduct searches on the other DPS employees.
So the risk assessment, you say it's a draft risk assessment.
The risk assessment was in draft, that's right.
Was it called a draft
yes,
risk assessment?
Yes, it was called draft.
So was it emailed to you?
It was emailed to me, yes.
What's the process for risk assessments? Is normally a draft prepared and then sent to the senior officer for discussion? So it's a working document, or could you take me through that process? In
this case, a draft was sent to me for discussion, and we had that discussion the next day. I left that meeting with the understanding that the then Chief Information Officer and I were both in agreement that the discussion that we had had and the changes that we had made in terms of DPS ICT undertaking searches in relation to some of the DPS employees met the concerns that were raised, and that I was not provided at any stage with a final risk assessment, either in relation to those concerns or that had been changed to reflect the changes in approach that we had taken.
So the risk assessment, do you have a copy of the draft risk assessment that could be tabled?
Can I take that on notice to provide for you?
What did it say the risk assessment was? Like, if it's a risk assessment, does it say hot, cold? Is it like, in terms of the terminology?
So the risk assessment, like a normal risk assessment, then refers to the risk rating that is given to various actions, in effect. So on a normal risk assessment, you would have risk ratings from low, moderate, severe, and you'd usually have some colouring around that as well. So low being green, I think usually moderate's yellow, severe is usually red.
And what was this? What was the draft risk assessment?
The draft risk assessment was red, so there was concerns being raised with me.
And did those concerns go? And those concerns went to the release of information to the lawyers and the subcontractors?
It went to the bulk extraction of data.
Okay.
So material had by this stage already been released and had been released by the DPS ICT staff without any concerns being raised with me through a draft risk assessment or in other means about those risks. This was particularly in relation to the second search that I authorised, which was because the first search there were serious concerns about. The second search was about there being a bulk extraction of DPS employee data, but then that to be searched by TransPerfect and provided through a secure mechanism to HWLE to then ensure that there's no parliamentary data to then be provided to Dr. Ruffley. So this risk assessment was in relation to that, and as I said, the agreement that we came to was that some DPS employee data would be provided on bulk extraction and some would be searched by DPS ICT.
Okay. And was there a full extraction?
For some DPS employees, yes, but for some DPS employees, the searches were conducted by ICT. I now know that actually searches were not just done in relation to those DPS employees. Some searches were conducted across the APH network, which was entirely inappropriate.
But so in terms of the full mailbox extraction, how many DPS employees had their full mailboxes extracted?
It was 2, and it was just it was across a date range as well, and I think I've put the date ranges in the letter that I've sent to you. I think it was the 1st of February 2023 to the to the 30th of November 2023.
What were any protocols put in place to ensure that emails from parliamentarians that were in those mailboxes were isolated?
So the protocols that were put in place related to, firstly, that the search terms that were used were search terms that would that went to the ITR rather than to broader functioning of Parliament. Then there was a process that the data was provided across a system called Relativity, which is a secure system to be able to provide search results to HWLE. HWLE did not download that data onto their system. It stayed on Relativity, and they then reviewed the results to make sure that there was no parliamentary data within those results.
But how would you define parliamentary data? Is an email from Senator, .mcgrath@aph.gov.au to the departmental secretary, that could cover issues in relation to parliamentary privilege? How were?
So, Senator,
can you give a guarantee that emails from parliamentarians did not leave the building?
So I can't give you the guarantee that emails from parliamentarians did not leave the building, and I was quite clear about that at the hearing last week, because it was a bulk extraction. Yes, if it was in a DPS mailbox that was extracted over that period of time, then it would have left the building, and it would be held securely by TransPerfect.
But isn't that the issue though, that data / emails, whatever you want to call them, information that could be covered by parliamentary privilege has left the building in an authorised process run by DPS?
And Senator, that's the reason why, as I understand it, the presiding officers have now requested that data be returned to APH, and I will be implementing their direction to me.
Do we know how many emails were in the bulk extraction?
So, Senator, I can't provide you with the number of emails, but I can provide you with the amount of data, which is what I provided you in the letter.
I thought I'd asked for that on notice on Friday, the number of emails.
And so I don't have the number of emails, but I have got the amount of data. I can continue to see whether I can provide the number of emails, but I can provide you with the amount of data.
And when you're ready, Senator McGrath will rotate the call.
Okay. So I just want to confirm that which full inboxes went. It was the former secretaries and the former deputy secretaries.
Senator, I need to just be a little bit careful here, and so please excuse me while I just take a moment. Yes, I can confirm in terms of yes, I can confirm in terms of an extraction in relation to the secretary, the former secretary and the former deputy secretary, but the other DPS employees where the extraction was taken, the NAC have indicated to me that it would prejudice their investigation if I indicated who they were.
Okay. Okay.
But-
Well, let's
sorry,
take the
Senator.
names out of it.
Yeah.
But a couple of very senior officers had their full inboxes gone, and other senior officers have had partial extracts go to the law firm. Is that correct?
So the on the search on the 22nd of August, or the search that was authorised on the 22nd of August, that was the secretary and the former secretary and the former deputy secretary's emails were searched by DPS ICT. There was two other more junior DPS employees whose data was extracted across those date ranges. For the extraction that occurred, that was authorised on the 30th of October, which was when TransPerfect extracted the mailed boxes of the 8 DPS employees for the date range that I've given, then yes, it was, that did include the former DPS secretary, the former deputy secretary and some other DPS employees.
One question, Chair. Did ICT give advice to you about concerns they have with the either the searching or the release of information that could be covered by parliamentary privilege?
DPS ICT raised with me in their risk assessment the potential for material to be included that could be parliamentarian material or material that to which parliamentary privilege applied.
But this is the... Shouldn't that have raised alarm bells?
Senator, in terms of the bulk extraction that occurred after the authorisation on the 30th of October, I went through a process of considering whether there were enough controls and protections in place to ensure that parliamentary privilege material did not go to the investigator, so it could not be used as part of the investigation, and that it was then quarantined and kept safe in relation to TransPerfect holding that data.
But still, the IT department division within DPS gave advice that the parliamentary privilege of parliamentarians could be breached by this, and yet DPS still made the decision to extract that information and
Senator,
release it to a third party.
And I'll be really clear about this. I made the decision.
You made the decision.
I made the decision. I considered the parliamentary privilege issue. I thought about that in terms of how I could ensure that parliament privilege was that, firstly, that your data as parliamentarians was protected even though a bulk extraction was occurring, and how to ensure that no material that was parliamentarian material went to the investigator, which would be a breach of parliamentary privilege in terms of it.
With respect, Secretary, it did go to the law firm, and it did go to a law firm who were hacked by the Russians, and it did go to their contractors.
It went to TransPerfect, who is a very well-respected legal data searching firm, and it went to TransPerfect after I had assurances in relation to the security of their system and of the way that they would deal with that material, including the security of their systems, the security of their premises, and how they would destroy the data once the investigation had been completed.
Was all the decisions that you made, was that all documented appropriately?
Senator, I have some of these decisions. So the decisions, yes, about providing access and for authorisation for the searches to be made. Yes, absolutely.
Can copies of that please be provided?
Yes, I'll take that on notice.
Thank you, Chair, for your forbearance.
Thank you. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for appearing again today. President, thank you for your statement. I don't have any questions of you, so my questions are mainly of Ms Hinchliffe. Ms Hinchliffe, what dates have you been employed at DPS or related agencies? My understanding is you were employed in DPS in 2015?
Yes, Senator, let me just think about the timing of that. I think I started in April 2015 and was with the department until December 2017 when I was appointed the Deputy Commonwealth Ombudsman.
Appointed Deputy Ombudsman?
That's right.
Okay. And then when did you leave that to go to the NAC to set it up?
No, so I then was appointed the Integrity Commissioner of the Australian Commission of Law Enforcement Integrity.
Of what?
And that...
What was that title?
The Integrity Commission of the Australian Commission of Law Enforcement Integrity, and that was in February 2020. And then ACLI, which is the acronym for that organisation, was mogged into the NAC on the 1st of July 2024.
And what was your role at the NAC? You were setting it up?
I was appointed by the then attorney as an acting deputy commissioner for a period during the initial months of the establishment of the NAC, and then I came to DPS as the deputy secretary I think on the 12th of February last year. And I think it was the 12th of February because it was a estimates day.
Thank you. And you were here when Mr Stefanik's materials were raided or taken by the NAC?
I was here during the NAC search warrant, yes.
Thank you. Did you hire Kate Saunders?
No.
What was your role in the DPS before, during the first time? Was it as HR manager, people and governance?
I think my title was assistant secretary,
HR?
governance and something. The HR team sat in my
So you were
in my
overseeing.
group.
So you weren't involved even though you're overseeing HR?
Miss Saunders started after I left.
Okay. When did she start?
I think I've provided evidence before on her, into this committee on her start date. I don't know off the top of my head. We can find out for you.
If you could, please. Thank you. Did you know Kate Saunders before she was hired?
No.
Not at all? Not working or professional?
No.
Okay. Coming to Fiona Ruffley, was she employed as a research officer in the Senate?
I think she was employed as a research officer in the Senate. I think that's in her CV and on her website.
Did you know her before she was hired?
No. No, I didn't.
You didn't have
know
any
her.
idea of her?
No.
Who gave you the job as Deputy Secretary?
I went through a merit process, an interview, and there was an interview panel, and I was appointed through that process.
So who appointed you?
Well, I assume that it was the then secretary.
You assume? No letter of offer?
You're absolutely right. I would have had a letter of offer, and yes, it was signed by him. So
Okay.
that would be the normal process.
That's Mr Stefanik.
That's right.
Thank you. Now I'd like to come back and ask you questions about Department maintaining suppression order in the case of ACD 13. Hasn't been answered before, so I'd like to ask it again. Why is the Department maintaining the suppression order in the case of ACD 13, a security officer, despite the complainant wanting it to be lifted?
Senator, the department's not a party to that suppression order, and I've provided evidence to this committee before that it's not a matter that the department can can make a decision on. That's a decision for the court, and it's a matter for the court to decide. Or I think there's a provision in the suppression order that allows all parties to decide that for the release of information, but the department is not a party to that.
Well, thank you for that answer. My understanding is, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, suppression orders are usually to protect the identity of a complainant. He wants that complainant, ACD 13, wants the suppression order lifted, so that doesn't really apply here. Doesn't need to protect his identity. The only reason left for the suppression of the suppression order is for the protection of your own department from potential embarrassment. Is that correct?
I've already indicated that this is not a matter for the department. We're not a party to those proceedings, so I can't do anything to lift the suppression order.
So you can't take any notice of ACD 13 wanting it lifted?
I can't do anything in relation to the suppression order.
Senator Roberts, you have asked these before, and the department, Ms Hinchcliffe, has been very clear the department is not a respondent in any way. So there's nothing the department can do.
Okay. So I'll just recap, and I think I might cross paths sometimes with Senator McGrath. Just to recap, on the 9th of October, a DPS officer intercepted some mail to a politician in Parliament House. I opened it and shared its contents with it.
Sorry, Senator Roberts, you said the 9th of October. When? What year?
I've forgotten which year.
Sorry?
I haven't got it in which year.
Well, it's a bit hard, I think, to ask the officials about 9th of October. It could be 2018, it could be 2025.
The scope of with respect, President, I think the question will reveal itself. I think you'll know, as Ms Hinchcliffe might know.
I'd just ask you to be cautious, Senator Roberts. I don't know what you're about to say, but just in terms of
yeah, sure.
Staying within the bounds.
This is a general overview. I'm just checking to make sure I've got it correct. You've already pointed one error. So in my checking, on the 9th of October in a year, a DPS officer intercepted some mail to a politician in Parliament House, opened it and shared its contents with at least 2 others over the period 9th to 15th of October of that year. 2 decisions emerged. One 2 days later to allocate the June public interest disclosure for consideration and investigation. The other on 15th of October to charge ACD 13, a security officer, with the unauthorised disclosure of Commonwealth documents to a third party in breach of the Parliamentary Code of Conduct, and to impose restrictions on his work. ACD 13 identified the mail as his, and an attempt to make an external public interest disclosure under whistleblower provisions, I think. Following on from the June public interest disclosure, ACD 13 stopped working at DPS and was the complainant in the legal action. Are you confident you've implemented reforms to make sure senators' communications and parliamentary privilege are absolutely protected?
Senator Roberts, if I can assist the committee, I'm reliably informed this was 2018. It's 7 years ago. It absolutely predates, as Ms Hinchcliffe has demonstrated, her employment.
My question
sure.
with respect, President, is Ms Hinchcliffe confident that she's implemented reforms to make sure senators' communications and parliamentary privilege are absolutely protected?
Senator, in terms of the work that we are doing at the moment in our ICT area and the discussion that I'm having with Senator McGrath, that's quite different from my understanding of this case, and really my understanding of this case comes from the federal court judgment rather than anything else about it. In this case, the federal court judgment has set out the reasons why they considered that there was no interim relief that was required under the Public Interest Disclosure Act. I've also sent you, at last time we discussed this at estimates, you raised with me a number of questions that went to issues that related to the understanding of the former secretary, and after that I sent you a letter that set out some evidence he had given in this matter at an estimates hearing previously. I'm not sure that I can add anything further in relation to this matter.
Did the person in ACD 13's case who intercepted the mail addressed to a senator ever face any disciplinary action?
Senator, I don't have any further knowledge about this than what I have just provided you.
Senator Roberts, we're going to have to rotate the call, but I would just point out that 2018, that's not something that I would imagine Ms Hinchcliffe's got a direct line of sight to in terms of what happened internally.
I'm just checking another question.
Yeah, so.
So, with regard to the bulk handover of material for the Ruffley investigation, you've already answered that that was severe risk, red.
No, what I said, Senator, was that I was provided with a draft risk assessment from the ICT team, which I then discussed with them because of my concerns about it, as well as for them to give them the opportunity to raise their concerns about it. And we discussed a way forward. That draft risk assessment was never finalised. My understanding was that there was that they were content with the procedure that we had come up with, and so that was my answer to Senator McGrath a moment ago.
Who's final question, Chair?
We do need to rotate,
Final question. Who's being held accountable for the data breach? Is it you because you made the final decision?
Senator, which data breach?
The original data breach ACD 13's case.
Senator, I've just
sorry,
said
you weren't involved.
I wasn't involved in that. I've just received some further information. You asked a question about when Ms Saunders was started with the department. It was the 7th of the 7th of December 2017.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Rotate the call.
Thank you.
And I think we just need to be cautious about conflating different issues in this context. Senator Roberts. Yeah. Senator Hume.
Thank you, Chair. I just want a couple of clarification questions. First of all, about the risk assessment. Ms Hinchcliffe, you said that there was the terminology was red, green, yellow. Was it just colours, or were there words that were attached to it? Was it low, medium, high, moderate?
No, there were words attached to it.
What were the words that were associated with red?
I think the words are usually associated as severe and extreme, but I can check that
Severe and
for
extreme
you.
risk.
Yes, Senator, it was a red risk.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
that was a draft risk assessment.
That's right.
But, and you said that you felt that you had worked through the issues that were pointed out in that draft assessment.
Yes, that's
and
right.
then proceeded.
Well, then the DPS ICT team proceeded with undertaking the bulk extraction in relation to 2 DPS employees, and to conduct searches in relation to the other 6 DPS employees.
Does the ICT team usually proceed with a task that requires a risk assessment without that risk assessment not being in draft form?
Senator, I don't know the answer to that. That was what occurred on this occasion.
Did anyone in the ICT division request that a risk assessment was done that wasn't in draft form?
Not that I'm aware of. I only received the draft risk assessment. Then I had the discussion with the former Chief Information Officer. We came to an agreement about how we would proceed, and the draft. And I was not provided with a further draft assessment. My understanding was that that had allayed any concerns, and that there was no further need.
No, just for the sake of a paper trail, for your own security, surely you would want to have a formal and final risk assessment upon which you have clearly responded, reacted, acted and directed.
And Senator, I was not provided with a final risk assessment.
The draft risk assessment, what are the options that are given to you in a way to respond to a draft risk assessment? Does it say, do we go, stop, discuss, consider? What do you have to do?
Well, the draft is marked as a draft, so it's a draft. It was provided to me as a draft for discussion. We had a meeting the next day and we discussed and resolved a way forward.
Did you ask for a risk assessment before you proceeded?
No, I did not, Senator.
Why not?
Because in relation to the provision of the authorisation on the 22nd of August, sorry, I don't want to confuse the dates, given that there's 3 different authorisations that were given. I provided that authorisation, and I included in that email correspondence that I was happy to discuss if the former Chief Information Officer would like to discuss a different way forward. He then came to me to say that the team were producing a risk assessment, and then I was provided with the draft risk assessment.
So if you get a draft risk assessment that says extreme risk, even if you discuss things after that, even if you find a way forward, surely if you've got something that says extreme risk, you would want a final document. You would request a final document that lowered the risk rating before you proceeded.
And Senator, I didn't receive a final risk assessment.
Did you request one?
No, Senator, I did not request one. My understanding was that that the risks, the concerns and the risks had been allayed, and then the ICT team continued with their searches and extractions.
But you're their boss. They tell you, you tell them what to do. Surely you wanted to have for your own comfort, for your own sake, documentation to say, well, all the risks have been assessed, and either we proceed or we deviate and do something else, or we adjust, or whatever it is. And there wasn't a document?
No, Senator. There was as I said, there was a discussion. My understanding was that from that discussion that the concerns that were raised had been allayed, and then DPSIT continued with the searches and extraction.
So that was the second search. What about the third search? If the second search was an extreme risk search, what about the third one? Did you request a risk assessment for that?
So the third one, Senator, I went through a process of considering the security of the data being held with TransPerfect, and the security of parliamentarian data there, and as I said, considering the parliamentary privilege issues and ensuring that there were adequate controls there.
So that's no. You didn't ask for a risk assessment for the third search?
No, Senator. That's what I did. I didn't ask for a risk assessment. I did those things that I just said.
You did your own assessment of the
Senator.
risk, but there was nothing formal and there's nothing documented?
That's right, Senator.
If you were concerned about risk in the second search, why did you allow a third search?
Senator, I allowed a third search because the data that had been provided to Dr. Ruffley coming from the second search did not include all of the data that Dr. Ruffley had expected to be there, and Dr. Ruffley raised with me serious concerns about the data searches that had been provided by DPS ICT.
Do you think that ICT is probably better qualified to make an assessment of risk than you might be?
Senator, I think that I was comfortable to make an assessment in terms of the security of the data with TransPerfect, and to consider the controls around parliamentary data in relation to this extraction.
But you didn't think to ask for a risk assessment a second time because a third time for the third search, because the second search risk assessment was extreme, and therefore this one would likely be that. Ms. Hinder, you're nodding your head.
No, Senator, I'm simply following the conversation.
Okay. I want to understand why in a search that has already been categorised extreme risk, even if you mitigated some of that risk, you went ahead without the documentation and then went ahead with a third search without even a risk assessment.
And Senator, I was of the view that the draft risk assessment that had given to me had been overrated in relation to the risks, but we'll put that to one side. I then did, as I said, I considered the risks and I considered the security of the information in relation to the use of TransPerfect, and that was the process that I went through.
Why did you think that the risk was overrated?
The risk assessment that was provided to me included treatments within it that had that were already in place. So instead of the treatments already being reflected in the initial assessment, they were put there as being treatments that needed to occur, as opposed to.
When you say treatments, what do you mean?
So in relation to a risk assessment, you'll often have an initial risk assessment which will say, this is, if you don't do anything else, this is what it means, but if you do, but here are the treatments you can do to bring those treatments down.
Right, so mitigation measures.
So, yeah, that's exactly right. And so some of those treatments were already in place, so they hadn't been understood as by the ICT team that did the assessment as being in place. There was also some assumptions that were made within the risk assessment as to the data that I didn't think was correct. However, as I said, I then had a conversation with the former Chief Information Officer to mitigate his concerns, or the concerns of the team, in relation to the 22nd of August request.
Can I ask whether TransPerfect, did they come on site?
Yes, they did, Senator.
What date did they come on site?
Were
they with the second search and the third search?
No,
or?
they came on site for the third search.
And what date was that?
I think it was the third. Sorry, let me just check that for you. I'd like to say it was the 31st of October and the 1st of November, but I just want to check that that's right.
Senator Nicola Hinder, Deputy Secretary and Chief Operating Officer. The Secretary is correct. I think it was the 30th of November and the 1st of December, but if that is incorrect, I'll correct it on the record.
No, 31st of October
and the 1st
of November.
Do they need a pass to come in?
Senator, they did not require a pass to come in. They were signed in as authorised to be able to come onto the premises. They required escorting. They were escorted at all times that they were on the premises, and when they were undertaking the data search, they were also supervised.
Who were they escorted by, and who supervised the search?
Senator...
You don't need to give me their names,
no,
just the titles, obviously.
The escort was a SES Band 1 officer, and the person who undertook the supervision was a senior employee within the department's ICT division.
Okay. What vetting was done TransPerfect?
Senator, in relation to TransPerfect, my concerns were that they were, as I said previously, was that they had appropriate security in relation to the data that was being provided to them, so that the data would be held in an Australian data centre, which had been security certified, that any physical medium would be, that was involved in the extraction would be encrypted and stored securely.
I'm fine with all of what your concerns were. What vetting was done?
Sorry.
You asked you what vetting was done.
As in?
Of TransPerfect and the contractors that came into the building.
Oh, sorry.
Did you do security clearances? Did you do police checks?
Senator...
Sorry, Senator, I misunderstood you.
Sorry, the TransPerfect employee that came is the current holder of an AGSFA security clearance.
Right. So did you need to do additional police checks, security checks for DPS?
No, Senator, provided that our officers hold AGSFA clearances to the correct level, which was confirmed before the representative of TransPerfect came to undertake the data extraction. That provides sufficient surety. And again, I note that the TransPerfect officer was supervised at all times by a representative of the department's ICT.
So how did you establish that they had an AGSFA clearance?
Senator, it forms part of the standard contract in place between HWLE and also TransPerfect, and I understand that it also formed part of the arrangements that were discussed and agreed with HWLE and TransPerfect before they attended.
So does HWLE have an AGS for clearance?
Senator, I don't believe that they are actually required to hold an AGS for clearance because of the clearance processes that are undertaken in order to have them appointed to a whole of government legal services panel. And that also requires Essential 8 security. It also requires adherence to the PSPF.
So does TransPerfect...
Hume, if we're going to rotate, again, you are rotating amongst yourselves, so just an alert that if your other colleagues wish to also ask some questions, but up to you.
Okay, I just want to understand the security clearance process. Is it normal practice to rely only on one security check? Does DPS have a, do its own security checks?
Senator, Mr. Khan
Contractors?
will be able to confirm with me if I'm incorrect. However, for DPS permanent employment, I believe it is actually a requirement to have a police check undertaken.
And was a police check undertaken?
This was not for a permanent DPS employee.
What
this
about-
was for services that were constructed.
What's privileged access? Is that, I've just been looking at your
Sure.
security documents, wading my way through them. There's an awful lot of them.
That's fine. So privileged access, Senator, refers to the level of authorisation or accreditation that a person has to have in order to be able to have, for want of a better term, super user access to be able to access data on the system. So
This sounds like what TransPerfect had.
Well, Senator, I can confirm that in order to be able to do the data searches, they needed to have the same level of data access to our system as current DPS officers have. They were assigned that same level of privilege to be able to do the data extraction with our authorisation and agreement. And again, I know that they were undertaking that activity under full supervision at all times.
So this document says that privileged access can only be granted to staff with a negative vetting 1 or higher security clearance.
Yes, Senator, and I've already confirmed that the representative from TransPerfect held an AGS for security clearance.
And
it
that's
was
the
at
equivalent of an NV1?
It was an NV1.
It was an NV1?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And what about, one of the documents that you have provided us, which is the, you only gave us this afternoon, the HWE, I'm going through my documents here.
So I
Their
believe
data security measures statement. That's something that you provided this afternoon, is that correct?
Yes, that's right, Senator.
Now, that's dated November 2025.
Yes, it was provided. This has been provided particularly today for this committee,
Right.
So that you can have assurance as to HWLE's security position.
But this wasn't the data security measures that were in place at the time that the searches took place.
Senator, yes, a number of these were in place at the time when these were in place at the time when the. And
Okay. I think it would probably be more helpful to have a document that was relevant to the time that the searches took place rather than subsequent.
Senator, I can check with HWLE that this is their statement of then and now, and I will get back to you about that.
Okay. All right. I have some more questions, Chair, but I'm happy to rotate the call for the moment.
Thank you, Senator Hume. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to follow up one line of questioning that Senator Hume was pursuing there, and then I want to move to a slightly different aspect of this. Ms Hinder, you just said that HWLE is compliant with the Essential 8 security practices. To what maturity level?
Maturity level 2, Senator.
Level 2?
Yes.
Right. So there are 4 levels of maturity to the Essential 8. 2 is, middling performance. It's not exceptional performance. Is that satisfactory in your view to hold potentially parliamentary privileged material?
Well, maturity level 2 is consistent with the maturity level mandated for Commonwealth government agencies, Senator.
Yes, and the ANAO has been very candid about their concerns about their insufficient progress in Commonwealth agencies. That does not reassure me at all.
And and I'm taking this from the HWLE's statement, on most mitigation strategies it complies with maturity level 3, Senator. So as the PSPF works and I know that you know this, Senator, because of your previous roles, you can be at a maturity level 3 on a number of things but still come out with an overall rating of maturity level 2. That's what HWLE is.
Okay. President, thank you for your opening statement and for providing this correspondence from yourself and the Speaker to the Secretary. Why did you and the Speaker feel it was necessary to take this action?
I said in answer to the committee's questions last week that we had raised very similar concerns to DPS as the committee had. I indicated to the committee that I had had a couple of conversations with the clerk around privilege issues, and bearing in mind the concerns of MPs and senators or parliamentarians expressed by this committee, the Speaker and I have acted. It is, I think, appropriate to have the data here that would give myself and the Speaker confidence. I'm not suggesting we don't have confidence now, but I absolutely believe that the data is best held here. But that isn't to suggest I don't have confidence in the Secretary or the Deputy in the way that they have proceeded.
That's what I want to test, and I don't want to personalise this about your level of confidence in individuals, but just how this issue was handled in the process. If you have confidence in how it was handled, why is it necessary to bring this data back in-house?
Because like you, Senator Patterson, I'm uncomfortable about it.
Right, so something must be wrong if you're not comfortable with it.
No, Senator Patterson, nothing is wrong. But I think to satisfy all of us who are parliamentarians and a potential issue of privilege, the data is best held here to give you confidence if the NAC or there was any requirement for the data to be examined any further, bearing in mind it has not been examined, that you would have confidence that the MOU that the Parliament has in place with the AFP, the MOU, and IPIA, which is not really relevant in this matter, would come into play and the clerks would be involved. I think that would certainly give me and the Speaker confidence. That's why we've moved in this way. That isn't to suggest we don't have confidence right now.
Well, I agree with this, with what you just said, and I welcome the fact that you've done this. I think it is the right thing to do, but that is because I'm not confident, and I suspect a lot of colleagues are not confident with this data being stored externally, and I'm finding it very difficult to reconcile your two propositions that there's nothing to see here, nothing to worry about, no reason to be concerned, but we're just going to bring it back in-house. Like, they're contradictory positions, aren't they?
Well, they are not contradictory positions, Senator Patterson. I want to, if there has been a loss of confidence, bearing in mind there are matters here that DPS can't discuss that go to other investigations, which the Secretary has been clear with the committee from day one. This goes back to last year and lines of questioning that Senator Hume was pursuing quite correctly. And if there is an issue around confidence of other parliamentarians, bringing it back to the Senate, where the clerks will hold that material, I think gives it a different level of confidence. So that's my concern. That's why the Speaker and I have acted, and I hope it goes some way to restore any concerns that you might have.
There's one other practical difference, though, and you alluded to it in your previous answer, though, which is that the Parliament does have MOUs about access to this material with the AFP and the NAC and other bodies. As the clerk said in his evidence last week, HWLE has no MOUs with those bodies or with the Parliament. So an additional layer of protection now exists when this data is brought back in-house, isn't there?
I think there are other questions, and I'll have to take this on notice because obviously there is another investigation on foot. So I'll have to take on notice what you're asking me, Senator Patterson, but I reiterate, I do have confidence in the way that Ms Hinchcliffe and Ms Hinder have proceeded, but this is an extra layer that the Speaker and I feel is necessary.
But just as a matter of logic, right now, with the data being stored at TransPerfect, courtesy of HWLE, the NAC Commissioner or the AFP can go to them without reference to the clerks and get access to that material.
No, that's not true. Hypothetically, if the NAC wanted access to DPS, because it's not HLE data, it's DPS data, then the MOU would come into play.
Okay, so there is no additional protection for bringing it in-house then?
Well,
You can't have it both ways.
Senator Patterson, I'm not quite sure what you're asking me. I thought the physicality of the data was of concern to senators. It's of a concern to me.
It is.
So bringing it back here takes that concern away.
Indeed.
Of course, if the NAC looked at any data that involved parliamentary privilege, the MOU that is in place with the NAC, which has been refreshed, would come into play.
Well, I think...
Now, there's always a risk that perhaps the clerks say that there's not privilege in that matter,
Sure.
all of those sorts. I can't preempt any of that, and I'm speaking hypothetically, but that risk of where the data is removed. It's not about... I'm confident that the NAC entered into the MOU discussions, which I chaired along with the Speaker, with good faith, and I think we've got... It's not the best model, and I think some people might still think we could have done better, but it is the best we were able to negotiate in good faith with the AFP, who also negotiated in good faith. It's a big improvement of what was there beforehand, and I think it gives us comfort.
Remind me when you first became aware of this and were first raised concerns about this with the Secretary?
I'll have to take that on notice, Senator Patterson.
What was it, weeks ago? Was it months ago? Just so that I can proceed with these questions to help me out?
I believe it was around the 20th of August.
Okay, thank you.
27th of August.
The which?
27th.
27th. So if you were concerned on the 27th of August about this, it was in the media last week with Mr. Probyn's reporting, and we asked questions about it then. Why have you waited till today to take this action?
Senator Patterson, this has been an evolving process. There has been an ongoing investigation in place. So over time, the Speaker and I have become more aware of what is happening. As I said to the committee last week, this has started as an investigation quite properly into the payment of an ITR, a code of conduct. That is not my business. But if there are issues around what has happened as part of the investigation that go to matters that relate to parliamentarians or to the issue of privilege, that is my business. So to suggest that I would not have had the full picture in August, but I have been concerned from day one and I've acted.
When would you say you felt you have had the full picture? Do you think you have the full picture now?
Yes, I think I've had the full picture for a number of weeks.
Right, but you didn't take this action a number of weeks ago?
Because I have been, as I said, I have had confidence in Ms Hinchcliffe and Ms Hinder, but the Speaker and I have been talking about this, and we believe the data is best held in the Parliament under the supervision of the clerks, because that is what parliamentarians expect.
Thank you. Ms Hinchcliffe, you said before in response to questions from Senator Hume that you considered the parliamentary privilege risk.
Yes, Senator.
Did you seek advice on the parliamentary privilege risk?
No, I didn't, Senator.
Really?
Yeah, that's right, Senator. I considered, I went back to first principles and thought through the issues of ensuring that parliamentary privileged material, or material that even broader than that, that belonged to a parliamentarian, did not go to the investigator in this matter. And I worked through the controls that we had in place. But I concede, given the concerns that have been raised in this committee, that it would have been beneficial for me to have sought advice from the clerk, which I did not do.
Why didn't you?
Senator, for exactly the reason that I just discussed, I went through the first principles process and was assured in my mind that there were adequate controls of the confidentiality of parliamentary data, and that no parliamentary privileged information would go to the investigator. But as I said, I can see from the conversations that we've had in this committee that it would have provided a much greater assurance to senators if I had sought that advice.
Sure. And Ms Hinchcliffe, you're an accomplished and senior public servant, but none of us are experts in everything, and you have the great benefit of heading a department that has not too far from it people who are experts in parliamentary privilege. Did you really prefer your own judgment over the clerk's judgment about the risk of parliamentary privilege?
Senator, I've conceded that I didn't seek the advice of the clerks, and that it would have been better placed if I had.
I think what we can say, Senator Patterson, I'm trying to be transparent, but bearing in mind there's a NAC overlay, is that what initially started as one investigation has led to obviously a broader investigation. I think you can surmise that. So at this point, I think you can say, well, with the value of hindsight, why didn't you do X, Y and Z? But because this has been an evolving piece, that one investigation then led to questions about other things that were happening, it's not been a linear process about one particular aspect. It is a process which has gone off onto another shoots
I appreciate
as we've
that.
gone along. So
I appreciate that,
it is not a linear process where the Secretary could have went, yes, it should have happened.
But President, you know as well as anyone in this room, probably better, the long history of privilege issues between the Parliament and DPS. This is a well-litigated, controversial area. I would have thought anyone, upon being appointed Secretary of the DPS, would familiarise themselves with that history, or even applying for the job or going through an interview with that job, would appreciate that. And if the Secretary of DPS is not sensitive to concerns about parliamentary privilege, we've got a whole range of other problems, don't we?
Well, I don't accept the characterisation Ms Hinchcliffe has answered your questions. The other thing I just want to go back to, Ms Hinchcliffe said in her opening statement, I think last week, that you asked me about the investigation by the journalist Andrew Probyn, and Ms Hinchcliffe said there were a number of inaccuracies in that, in the questions that were put to DPS. So I just add that to my response to your questions.
But it's only thanks to Mr Probyn that we know about this. As a parliamentarian, I was completely in the dark about this until I saw his report and read about it. And I do want to ask about that now. Ms Hinchcliffe, did you ever consider informing parliamentarians that their privilege might have been breached?
Senator, in relation to the informing parliamentarians that DPS employee data had been extracted from the ICT system and provided to TransPerfect in order to be able to do searches. I would say that is how I have thought about this process. This is DPS employee data that has been extracted from the ICT systems and provided to TransPerfect for searches to be conducted to be able to determine DPS's part in a payment of an ITR payment where serious concerns were raised with me about whether DPS had done the right things. So I put that context in it in terms of that's the way I have been thinking about this investigation and about the extraction of the data.
Sure. But didn't you say that in the first search that was conducted by DPS employees that it was of the entire APH network, not just the relevant DPS employees?
And Senator, I wasn't aware of that at the time that the searches were being undertaken. But yes, that's right.
When did you become aware of it?
Senator, I'll have to take that on notice. There was further investigation that DPS has undertaken to be able to determine what had actually happened with the DPS searches because of the concerns that were raised by Dr Ruffley about the amount of or the lack of information that was provided.
Thanks, Chair. But isn't it the case that it's highly possible, if not likely, that privilege was breached in that first search by DPS employees, given it canvassed the entire APH network?
As I said, I'm very concerned about the fact that those searches were conducted across the whole of the APH.
So when did you
network.
plan to tell parliamentarians that our privilege might have been breached in that instance?
Senator, as I've indicated, we've gone through a process now of a number of internal investigations in relation to these matters, and I note that I hadn't provided that information to parliamentarians, and I'll reflect on that.
Can I just ask a final question, Chair, then please rotate the call. If this happened again, if you came across a DPS search or an external search or whoever that potentially breached the privilege of parliamentarians, would you handle it differently by, as a bare minimum, disclosing to the Parliament that this might have happened?
Yeah, I would go and seek advice from the clerk, and I'd also talk to the President and work through the process to be able to do that. Yes, Senator.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Pocock.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your time this evening. Secretary, I'm keen to ask a few things around Department's policy around bullying, and then come back to some ICT questions. I'm keen to understand the Department's policy when it comes to dealing with personnel who've been named in bullying complaints. I'm not asking for any specific cases, but would like to know as a general principle how you investigate and then what steps can be taken in the case when claims are actually upheld.
So Senator Nicola Hinder, Deputy Secretary Chief Operating Officer. Senator, we have clear policies in relation to bullying and harassment. The Secretary, the executive team are very focused on making sure that we are providing a workplace that is free of bullying and harassment and that staff feel safe and supported to be able to come to work. There are processes where our staff can go through to be able to report instances of bullying and harassment or other inappropriate behaviour. That will depend on how that information is assessed as to what those next steps are. So if, for instance, that it is something that is serious and constitutes serious bullying and harassment, there are options that the department can go through in terms of internal investigation, external investigation, consideration against whether or not the actions have or haven't impacted the Parliamentary Service Code of Conduct and also the Parliamentary Service values. If it is something which is more anecdotal, unable to be verified, conversations can be had with individuals, conversations had with teams. Obviously, those conversations are also documented when they're appropriate to do so. All government departments that I've ever had the privilege of being able to work in have got circumstances where staff have felt unsatisfied, though, with the results of an investigation that's occurred. And as someone that's been involved in HR for a period of time, that's a really challenging situation to be able to work through, because obviously you may have taken all of the appropriate steps to be able to identify, rectify, call out, put in place management arrangements for the person against whom the allegation has been made. But it is also not appropriate at times to go back to the person that made the allegation to be able to give them the specifics of what has actually occurred. So that is a very challenging HR situation that everyone faces when we work through bullying and harassment.
Thank you.
What I can say is that our census results from this year have indicated a very slight increase in relation to bullying and harassment. Last year, I believe we were reporting around about 11%. This year, that number is written to 13%. There are ways that you could look at that. That's negative, and obviously the department's taking that very seriously. But there are also ways to be able to look at that return to actually say our staff are now feeling confident and comfortable to be able to report these things. And that's the type of environment that we want to be able to create at DPS. We never want to see a situation where we have zero reports of bullying and harassment, because that also can indicate a culture of people not wanting to report. We want to have a culture where inappropriate behaviour is called out, action is taken, people are challenged around the actions and behaviours that they've experienced, constructive conversations are held with people against whom concerns have been raised, but also giving our staff the confidence to know that we do actually take action when it's called out.
Okay, thank you. What do you provide any support for people when it comes to difficult disclosures at work? If there is sort of some sensitivity or history around allegations, do you have process in place where people actually have, trauma-informed support, or what does that look like? How does someone reach out and access that?
Senator, we have very well publicised methods of how to be able to do that. The department has an employee assistance provider, TELUS Health. They are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to be able to provide advice and support to any officer that's experiencing any form of concern for them in the workplace. In addition, the Parliamentary Workplace Support Service is also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have nominated bullying and harassment officers and reporting officers that exist within the department. Their names are publicised. And in addition as well, there's also a series of other more formal mechanisms that staff can take to report allegations if they are concerned that the department may not be taking them seriously. They are issues like reporting through a PID process, for instance, or undertaking any other form of external report.
Thank you. And then just finally on this, do you have any processes in place when it comes to, I guess, managing complaints? Say there's a bullying complaint against someone. Are there processes in place to ensure that that person is not then, I guess, providing training and other things while that investigation is underway for the complainant?
So, Senator, there are systems in place, but I wouldn't want to be able to give you a cast iron guarantee that there wouldn't be interactions between particularly a manager and somebody working in the team if there has been a complaint made. Obviously, decisions are taken, though, based on when the complaint's received, the type of complaint that's been received. If it's exceptionally serious, we could take decisions to be able to withdraw a staff member and put them in another team. It's all considered on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. I've got some questions about the Information Services Division. I've been in the chamber, so please, if I'm asking questions that have been covered, just pull me up. How many staff are currently employed in the Information Services Division, ISD?
Senator, I don't have the staff details on the top of my head, but I'll get them for you in the next couple of minutes.
Thank you. And maybe compared to 12 months ago as well, please.
Sure, Senator. So I can answer the number in terms of staffing at the moment. The staffing levels have remained consistent. However, what the department has recently been working through has been a process where we have had a number of officers in the ICT division acting in long-term arrangements. One of the priorities of the Secretary, as we indicated to the committee last year, was settling our SES cohort. That also includes the ISD division. We've also just completed a bulk round for PEL2 officers in ISD, so they've been permanently appointed. And we're now going through the rest of the process as they cascade their way through.
Thank you. Do you know how many staff from ISD are currently on leave?
Senator, let me back up 1 second. The staff numbers for ISD at the moment, as at the 30th of September, are 287 officers, and I believe that number hasn't substantially changed between this time last year and this time this year. Officers on leave at the moment in ISD, Senator, there could be a variety of reasons why officers are on leave. And I personally wouldn't know whether or not we have an officer at the 6th level on leave at the moment for annual leave.
Okay, thank you. Have any critical ICT or digital projects been delayed or scaled back due to staff losses in ISD?
Senator, I think it's probably fair to say that we are going through the process of having a look at the significant number of ICT projects that have been underway for some time and making sure that we are either on track to be able to deliver them or whether or not we're reprioritising what their timeframes are. With that in mind, I'd really like to highlight and sincerely thank the officers of the ISD division who, over the caretaker period, rolled out 2 absolutely significant and very complex pieces of ICT projects on behalf of the Parliament, and that is the new ICT allocation policy, which has been approved by the President and the Speaker and is in the process of being rolled out, and a complex change to the department's telephony system, moving to Teams telephony from a heritage and very close to end-of-life project.
Thank you. And then touching on some of the questions around emails, to your knowledge, over the last 12 months, have ISD staff been asked to delete emails?
Senator, we wouldn't be able to answer that, but it certainly wouldn't have been any form of mass instruction around deletion of emails. They're Commonwealth records. They are required to be retained.
Okay. Secretary, to your knowledge, that hasn't happened?
No, Senator.
Okay.
It would concern me if there had been requests for emails to be deleted.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Happy to pass it.
Thank you. Senator McGrath.
Thank you. And just for those who are watching, and a number of people actually are watching the proceedings and have asked why we're focusing on sort of emails and parliamentary privilege, it goes to the role of senators being able to raise questions and issues without fear or favour. And it is that privilege that often is attached to the information that is supplied to us. And often we get emails from people within the building who do raise concerns in relation to the running of this building. And why I may not have a chance to go to the questions I wanted today in terms about the culture in the building, but a number of people have sent emails to that Gmail address, tell us the truth about dps@gmail.com, and Secretary, I note that you also sent a letter to that email address, because people do love this building and want this building to be the best that it can be. But just in relation to emails, are emails monitored? So in terms of the public servants who work for DPS, are their emails ever monitored? For example, are keywords are keywords put in and raise red flags?
Senator, I would not say that the department's email systems are actively monitored. However, I will note from time to time, if there are concerns in relation to data that is sensitive DPS data being provided, that there has been monitoring put in place over certain periods for certain classifications of employees. So there's no active monitoring system, Senator, no.
But, would that impact, I mean, this is why I've put that Gmail address in place, because there is a culture, almost a culture of fear within the building, that if people use their work address to email a parliamentarian about certain issues, that it would, set off an alarm in email world. Is that something that, in terms of trying to get to what actually is monitored?
Senator McGrath, I respect that you are asking your questions in a very careful way, but when you make statements like there's a fear of culture in this building, that goes to 8,000 DPS employees. I think that is an unfair characterisation. I think Ms Hinchcliffe or Ms Hinder has given evidence that, of course, there are still issues that need to be dealt with. But making statements like that basically land on every single DPS employee.
I'll obviously apologise for that, President, and I didn't want to get into this, but I do have this report here which clearly outlines that there are issues of cultural issues within this building, and my colleague Senator Pocock touched upon that. But there is a culture of if people do not think they freely can email parliamentarians with their concerns, President, in relation to the management of this building, which is a very special building for Australians, and the people who work in this building are just brilliant. They help us on this side of the table do our job, and we're in debt to them.
Yeah,
and I want to make
for that.
Yes, and I want to make sure that they have the best workplace they can. So I'm just concerned that people don't feel they can raise concerns, so that because their emails are being monitored.
So, Senator, firstly, I'd like to thank you for acknowledging the amazing work of DPS staff. I agree with you. They are so strongly connected to this building and to providing services to parliamentarians and to supporting democracy. We are on a cultural change journey to be able to not only ensure that we are providing parliamentarians with the services that they need in a timely manner, that we are not doing things to you, but we are doing things, we're providing the things that you need. We are working on making sure that we are transparent about the things that we are physically doing to the building, so that you can see the things that we are doing on your behalf to this building. And part of that as well is about the culture of the department, that people understand the mechanisms that they have to be able to raise concerns, that people understand that we are strongly focused on the parliamentary service values, and part of that is about respect, is about accountability, is about transparency. So I'd be really concerned if DPS employees had a sense of fear about being able to raise concerns. So thank you for raising that with me, Senator, and let me consider that further.
If I have the chance, I will read out some of the emails that I've received, or extracts of them. But I'd like to go back to the original line of questioning in relation to the missing data, and you said you had concerns about the first search that was done, and the lawyers and TransPerfect came in to the building. What I'm told is that industry best practice regarding electronic discovery like these searches is that technical teams from both the organisation and the investigators must collaborate to achieve accurate outcomes. Did collaboration occur between DPS ICT and TransPerfect?
Yes, Senator, I believe that it did.
You believe it did, or it did?
There were a number of conversations that I'm aware of that DPS ICT had with TransPerfect, and then when TransPerfect came in, not on the second data search, because they didn't come in for the second data search, they came in for the third. They came into DPS and were supervised by a DPS employee, as Ms Hinder's already indicated.
So I just want to, but I'll just go back to the actual questions. I was reading out the words because I wanted to be precise here. That industry best practice regarding electronic discovery, like these searches, is that technical teams from both the organisation and the investigators, in this case TransPerfect or the lawyers, must collaborate to achieve outcomes. And I just want to confirm that you're saying they did collaborate.
Yes, Senator, my understanding was that there were a number of meetings that were held between DPS ICT and TransPerfect. I will correct that if I am wrong, but that is my understanding, that there were.
The advice I have here from a whistleblower is that didn't happen. So what I want to know is how many times did ICT offer to discuss and refine any searches or escalate concerns around collaboration?
I will take that on notice for you, Senator.
And did any of those escalations go directly to you as Secretary?
Well, I was Deputy Secretary during the first two, and Acting Secretary during the during the third, and I've already discussed with you the draft risk assessment, which I discussed with the then Chief Information Officer, and then worked through the process that we agreed with. So.
But in your role, did you ensure that any collaboration occurred, or was it you just advised that it did happen?
I was, in relation to one matter, I ensured that there was a meeting between TransPerfect and the ICT team to work through some considerations. But yes, I'm aware that there were other meetings as well.
Okay, well, if you could, on notice,
I'll take that
some
on
of those
notice,
dates and
Senator.
those.
Of course.
Were any specific, you've said that you had concerns about ICT, but were any specific details put to ICT that they could correct?
In relation to concerns about the searches that have
Yes.
been conducted, yes, in the second, when I provided the information for the second search, there was concerns that I provided in relation to the quality and integrity of the data, which was the reason why the second search was being requested.
Senator McGrath
Okay.
will rotate when
Sorry.
you finish
Yes.
this.
Sorry, Ms. Hinder just has...
If I could just add an additional piece of information in relation to the collaboration between DPS ICT representatives TransPerfect and HWLE. My understanding is that there were 2 video conferences held between TransPerfect and senior DPS ICT regarding the searches. One was at the outset, and secondly with the second attempt at extraction, and I can attempt to find the dates of those on notice.
If you could. I know my colleagues have other questions, so I'll just...
Feel free to wrap up what it is you're doing there.
I've got folders of questions. Were any efforts made by DPS ICT to allow TransPerfect to use their tools in the APH environment?
Senator, I'd have to confirm on notice, but my understanding is that the current systems within DPS do not allow for the type of forensic data search that would be required to be able to satisfy the requests that the department had been receiving at that time.
Because my advice is that it means that it could have still, the data still could have been monitored by DPS cybersecurity and that the data would not have left the network.
Senator, again, I'd have to take that on notice, but my understanding is that we do not have the type of forensic data analysis tools that would permit us to undertake those types of searches that were being required.
Well, I do have further questions, but I will, Senator Hume.
Yes, Senator, if I just may, one thing to go
Certainly.
back for Senator Hume to answer a question that you asked previously about security clearances with HWLE as well. I can confirm that the senior partner that we've been engaged with is NV1 cleared through AGSFA, and the very small team that he had in operation to support with him are also AGSFA cleared.
And NV1 also applied to TransPerfect?
The NV1 was also in relation to TransPerfect and the operator that attended the building.
Thank you.
And Senator McGrath, I think you said 8,000 DPS staff. Sorry, I meant 1,000. I don't know. I don't know where that came from. So, my bad. Sorry.
Senator Hume,
Thank
you
you.
have the call.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. That wasn't one that I picked up on. First of all, Ms Hinder, you mentioned that staffing levels have been consistent. Could I just clarify that that is the number of positions, or is that the number of positions filled that is consistent?
I believe that the number of positions and the positions filled, I mean, the number of starting hasn't increased because our budget envelope hasn't increased.
No.
The recruitment action that we've been taken has been to fill positions that we have vacant or undertaking a TAD within the ICT division.
And what about turnover? Has that changed?
Senator, I think it's very fair to say that as a result of the recent recruitment round that we have gone through, some people internal within DPS were found suitable and promoted, other people were not. At that point, officers can take a decision if they choose to go back to their substantive level or look for other alternatives.
The information that I have, and I think that perhaps Senator McGrath and other senators might also be referring to, largely seems to revolve around ISD, but obviously this may well apply across other areas within DPS. Can I ask how many resignations there have been in ISD in the last 12 months?
Senator, we'd have to give you the precise numbers on notice if you're going down to the lower levels of the organisation as well as the senior levels in ISD.
I'd like it, if I can, have it
By
broken down
categorisation
between.
level?
Yep. But if you've got an indication as to whether the number of resignations in the last 12 months has been unusual, has it been more than usual, less than usual?
Are you asking that in specific for the ICT division, Senator, or
Yes.
across the board?
Yes. No. In the Information Services division.
I would be very comfortable to confirm that, as the Secretary said, we are on a major culture and uplift program across DPS, and there have been some resignations at the senior level, and there have been staff who have chosen to look for alternative avenues of employment.
Yep. I understand that, but I still don't understand exactly whether the number of resignations are unusual or not.
Senator, I don't believe that they're highly unusual for an organisation that's going through major change.
Okay. So you will give me on notice the number of resignations at each level in the last 12 months. If you could perhaps...
In the ISD division.
In the ISD division. And if you could perhaps compare that to the previous year, that would be helpful so that we get a sense. And you don't need to break it down into, I don't want to be able to identify anybody, that's fine. But I would like to get a sense of whether there has been unusual movement. I would also like to understand...
Senator, can I just to clarify that, because you've used the term resignation, do you mean do you mean movement away from DPS? So people who have resigned or might have transferred to another into the APS for another job, might have been promoted into another job in another agency. You want, or anyone who has separated from DPS?
Exactly.
Right, thank you.
I would, and obviously I know that people do move around, and
yes.
that is perfectly fair and
course.
understandable, which is why I want the previous year's data as well, so I get
sure.
a sense of what is usual and what
Sure.
isn't. How many people in that division have been sacked in the last 12 months?
Senator, we generally don't comment on private employment matters that come out of either code of conduct investigations or other investigations that have occurred. Can confirm, though, that there has been change in the senior levels of our ICT division.
You can't even give me any indication of how many people have lost their jobs.
Senator, as I've indicated, we don't generally comment on how people have separated from the department if there has been a termination. I am very comfortable to confirm, though, that there has been change at our senior levels.
I know that this is not convention, however, I think we're in rather unconventional circumstances here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation in the first place.
I can also add, though, Senator, that terminations do not occur in the parliamentary service or indeed the broader public service unless there has been a process that has been followed and an outcome reached and a decision made. So they are not something that is taken lightly. It is not something that can happen overnight at the whim of a delegate. There has to be a process undertaken and decisions made as a result of that process.
Have the sackings finished?
Senator, I wouldn't want to categorise it that there's a whole-scale plan for sackings.
When was the last one?
Senator Hume, I think it is really unfair, and Ms Hindra has said that it isn't appropriate for DPS to answer as to numbers of people who may have been terminated. That's not appropriate. Of course, individuals can contact you or me or any other senator and make a claim. That's absolutely their right. But as the employing body, it's not appropriate for DPS to discuss those matters, and Ms Hinder's been quite clear about that.
I recognise that, President. I'm happy to respect that. There is a pattern going on here, though, and I think that should be of concern. Can I ask for clarification, was the last termination today?
Senator, as I've already indicated, it's not appropriate that we discuss the basis upon which people have left the building if there has been a termination. If there has been a termination, it has occurred because we have followed due process, undertaken a process, had that considered and a decision been made. If I can just return to one other point, Senator, and I will come back to you in relation to separations within ISD, but I do think it's relevant, particularly in relation to the broader culture uplift which is courting across the department. Last year, the separation percentage for the department was 17%. It has decreased by 5% over the last 12 months. There is a lot to be celebrated with the results of our census results, and a lot to be celebrated with the direction that the department is progressing.
Can I ask how many people have been coded?
Senator, we don't comment on the number of people who are undergone or are undergoing the code of conduct process. It's deeply distressing for the people involved. It's also distressing for the people that are undertaking the process.
Is it an unusual amount?
Senator, as I've already indicated, the department is in the middle of a major cultural change. There has been exceptional scrutiny across this department over the last 12 months. And as a result of that, there have been some matters which have required closer scrutiny.
I realise that this is uncomfortable. I'm acutely uncomfortable even asking the questions.
Yep.
But unless you are claiming a public interest immunity claim, I would like this information. So,
I wonder if I could just be of assistance. Perhaps you could go and have a look at this data and see if there is a way of presenting it that may assist Senator Hume, bearing in mind, obviously, it is a very distressing scenario. And obviously we don't want, people make assumptions, and that's never helpful about how particular staffing matters roll out. So
I understand that, and I'm quite happy for you to go away and to give me the information that I'm asking for, but I do expect the information to come, not I'm afraid we can't give you that information, Senator. You either claim public interest immunity or you don't.
Well,
I'll take on notice.
If I can come back to this once again.
Yep.
I think I said last week it is not my role as the President to monitor what Ms Hinchcliffe and Ms Hinder do in relation to staff manager, all of those things. It isn't appropriate for Ms Hinder to respond to your questions, because that would, I think, go to matters that are private for any persons who might find themselves on the end of a code of conduct or a dismissal. They are free to exercise their rights. They are free to seek the services of the Fair Work Commission. They are free, of course, to send you emails. I think it's DPS's role to act professionally and to give confidence that these matters not be discussed, and I think that is what Ms Hinder is describing.
Sorry, President. Knowing now what has been uncovered throughout this estimates process, do you think that the department has acted professionally?
I don't know what you're suggesting has been uncovered, Ms Hume, but Senator Hume, I beg your pardon.
3 different data searches which potentially breached parliamentary privilege.
Well, with respect, I think what I said in my opening statement is that I have confidence in the actions of Ms Hinchcliffe and Ms Hinder. I think they have acted professionally at all times.
Okay, so that was good. I was going to ask you that question specifically, whether you retained confidence in the Secretary.
Yes, I do. I've said that. I've said that on a number of occasions.
Okay.
And as Ms Hinder has said, the department is undergoing cultural change that's difficult in any organisation.
Yes.
There will always be staff who don't agree with the way things are done. Before here I was a trade union elected official. Did that mean that everything in the union that I worked for was hunky-dory? No, it did not mean that. I mean, that's just not real world.
Yep, I agree. We've all worked in uncomfortable workplaces before.
Well, no,
it's
I'm
just
not
that
suggesting it's uncomfortable. No, please don't characterise what I've said. I think it's a normal course of a large workplace.
I understand that.
So, Senator Hume, we've reached the rotation point to reflect your other colleagues who also have questions, if you want to wrap up your current session. No, we're going to Senator Sharma next.
Just quickly, TransPerfect, sorry, good evening, I haven't said hello yet, Senator Dave Sharma. TransPerfect, the decision to engage them, who was that made by? Was that your lawyers or was that DPS?
It was done in consultation with our lawyers in terms of a partner who would be able to provide us with the security that we needed and also the searching capabilities.
So that's your lawyers, HWL Ebsworth?
That's right.
Okay. And TransPerfect employees were involved in the bulk extract exercise, the collection process and the searching and screening, is that right?
They were involved in the bulk extract that occurred in October, but they were the initial two searches, the information that came from the DPS searches were provided to TransPerfect and then provided through TransPerfect to HWLE and for HWLE to then review and then to ensure that only relevant material went to Dr. Ruffley.
Okay. So is there any contractual relationship between DPS and TransPerfect?
No, the contractual relationship is through HWLE.
Ebsworth. That's what I thought. But I mean, TransPerfect's also not on a list of approved government tenderers or anything. It doesn't go through a normal government tendering process, are they? Because you don't have a direct contractual relationship with them.
Senator, I wouldn't want to say that they are or aren't appearing on any of the whole of government panels until I'd confirmed.
But you didn't go to tender, for instance. I mean, this decision to use TransPerfect was a decision taken in consultation with HWL Ebsworth.
That's right, Senator.
Okay. I'm just wondering then, if you don't have a contractual relationship with TransPerfect, what recourse does DPS have if TransPerfect does not handle the information correctly or appropriately? Because you don't have a legal relationship with them.
Senator, it is worked through our relationship with HWLE.
I understand that, but you don't have... So just confirming, DPS doesn't have a direct contractual relationship?
That's right, Senator, yes.
Okay, so how would, in the case of TransPerfect misusing or abusing the information or failing to return it, for instance, how would DPS enforce a remedy or ensure that did not happen if there's no contractual relationship?
Through our contractual relationship with HWLE.
Okay, but it's a well-known principle of contractual law that you can't use a second party to enforce upon a third party an obligation.
They would be enforcing the terms of their agreement with TransPerfect, which would be on our behalf. And I will correct that if I'm wrong about that, Senator, but that is my understanding.
I would appreciate if you could just take that on notice. How would you enforce, or how would you ensure that any misbehaviour by TransPerfect was enforced? Were you aware that the founder and still the CEO of TransPerfect was sanctioned by a Delaware court about 7 years ago for, I'm quoting here, unusually deplorable conduct, including lying under oath, destroying evidence and securely accessing a business partner's emails?
No, I'm not aware of that, Senator.
Would that have been flagged? Was that flagged with you by HW?
No, that has not been
flagged. Ebsworth?
This is the first time I've heard that.
Okay, because this is the current founder and still current CEO. It's a court finding which was upheld on appeal by the Delaware Supreme Court, I believe. But it does suggest, at least in the past, that there have been instances of this company and the company's senior leadership not properly handling information of a sensitive nature which is within their custody.
And as I've indicated, Senator, TransPerfect is a well-respected legal data provider and research tool, and I assured myself in terms of the security of the the security arrangements that they have here. We're dealing with TransPerfect Australia and the security arrangements that they have here in relation to their operations.
I mean, it concerns me that this didn't get thrown up in a diligence check. It concerns me that you don't have a direct contractual relationship with TransPerfect. It concerns me that it didn't go through normal government process, because ultimately, although you have a contractual relationship with the law firm, it's TransPerfect that we are relying upon to protect parliamentary privilege and the sensitivity of government information here.
Senator, I take note of your concerns.
Okay. If you could take on notice that particular question about how we would enforce any contractual rights against TransPerfect, given we don't have a direct relationship.
Yes, I will.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll just flag that at 5 to 7, we had scheduled to finish at 7. My colleagues have more questions, just trying to work out to give people a bit of an estimation of how long we're going to be here. We'll just sort that out in the next few minutes and determine whether we'll take a break or whether we will keep going. So we'll go to Senator McGrath while I converse with my colleagues on that one.
Hume had a couple of follow-up questions.
I do. I probably have about 15 minutes worth, and then can we do an assessment at that point? Is that all right, Chair?
Sure. And Senator McGrath?
I have several hours worth of questions.
Yes.
That's why we need to...
Yeah, no. I'm well aware of that.
And I know that'll make myself the least popular person in the room. So we'll have a chat, but I expect I'll need to put them on notice or something like that, so I won't be holding people back.
Obviously, the options are to
and Chair, if I could just add, I am on duty at 10, assuming adjournment will finish before that. But
We're not.
yeah, so I'm just putting you on. You did say several hours.
Yeah, but no, I'm not going to ask. I spend several hours asking questions.
Thank you.
So,
okay.
Well, what we'll do is we'll go back to Senator Hume. We'll have a little assessment. If we're going to go longer than sort of 7:15, we will stop for a break and to get a better understanding so people can advise their families or other responsibilities about what their potential timings might be. So we'll go to you, Senator Hume.
Thank you. I've actually got some questions for the Acting Commissioner. Acting Commissioner, obviously one of your jobs is to administer the Department's Code of Conduct, and that is the code that governs everybody's professional conduct, the conduct of parliamentary staff. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct, Senator.
So who can make a referral to you under the code?
Referrals to the Parliamentary Services Commissioner are from the presiding officers.
From the presiding officers?
Under the statute. Under
the statute. Okay. Surely, however, there are plenty of breaches of codes of conduct that are referred to the APSC that don't come from the President or the...
Rachel Bacon, Deputy Secretary, Australian Public Service Commission. I can probably assist. In relation to notifications of the Parliamentary Services Commissioner, there was actually a new direction that was put in place under the Parliamentary Services Act in April of this year, and in accordance with that, there's a practice of giving notification to the Parliamentary Services Commissioner. That's a standard practice that's been in place in relation to the Public Service Act, under the Public Service Act for quite some time. So it essentially brings that notification process into line with the processes that have been in place under the Public Service Act.
Okay, that was a very long answer full of a lot of words that I'm not entirely sure answered the question that I was asking, but perhaps I asked the question poorly. I suppose what I want to understand is if there is a breach of a code or a suspected breach of a code, who can refer it to the Commissioner?
So the general practice is that agency heads are responsible for implementing code processes under their own policies within their department.
Okay, agency heads.
Agency heads, that's right. What I was referring to is a notification requirement under the Parliamentary Service Commissioner's directions.
Can the APSC self-refer?
the Parliamentary Services Commissioner, Senator? Is that...
Well...
Because under the Parliamentary Services Act, there's a Parliamentary Services Commissioner.
Yes.
That is a separate role and function to the Public Service Commissioner under the Public Service Act.
Okay.
That's right.
Can either the APSC or the Parliamentary Services Commissioner self-refer? When I say self-refer, I'm not saying refer themselves. I'm saying identify a breach of the code and then do an investigation into it.
As Dr Banerjee mentioned earlier, the powers of the Parliamentary Services Commissioner are set out, the functions are set out at Section 40 in the Act, and the provision at Section 41B is that the Commissioner's functions include, if requested by the presiding officers, to inquire into and report on matters relating to the parliamentary service specified in that request. There are some differences between the role of the Parliamentary Services Commissioner and the Public Service Commissioner.
Yes. Okay. Well, let me ask the Parliamentary Services Commissioner, the Acting Parliamentary Services Commissioner then, how many referrals you've had since January 2023?
Senator, as we've covered in other evidence, we don't generally go to numbers of specific referrals on code matters.
And as we've just discussed, if you're claiming public interest immunity, you should let me know that. If not, then this is a question that I do not feel is unreasonable in the circumstances.
Senator, perhaps if I could refer to some of the discussions at previous committees where the Parliamentary Services Commissioner has given evidence at this committee before. There has been a matter where the presiding officers, in accordance with Section 41B, has requested the Parliamentary Services Commissioner to inquire into a matter, and that the evidence I'm talking about there related to the inquiry into matters around the former Secretary of the Department.
Okay. So what's the potential result of an adverse finding under the code?
The process generally, and I can also defer to my DPS colleagues as well because they administer code processes within the department, but generally speaking, it will depend on the circumstances, it will depend on the breach findings as to what sanctions are appropriate.
Okay. Can you give me an
example? There can be a range of sanctions. I'm talking here more about my the work that we do under the Public Service Act, and I'll defer to my colleagues about the Department of Parliamentary Services, but they can range from a reprimand, counselling, through determination, and there are a range of different options, but there are some examples.
Okay. All right. Have any of the referrals that you have had led to disciplinary action or termination?
Senator, I don't mean to be difficult, but the language in the legislation is about a request from the presiding officers, and I've mentioned the request that it's be the subject of evidence in this committee. And to clarify, the evidence I was giving earlier around the Commissioner's directions, that is a provision requiring consultation rather than a referral.
So if there is a suspected breach of the code, it would require the President or the Speaker or the Speaker to make the referral.
Senator,
is this correct?
Senator, if I could jump in, I think the question that you're actually asking goes to what is the process that needs to be followed for DPS employees, DPS SES employees and DPS Parliamentary Service employees to undergo a code of conduct process.
If somebody says to me they've been coded, what does that mean?
That means, Senator, that there has been an allegation brought forward to them that they have acted in a manner that is either contrary to the Parliamentary Service Code of Conduct or the Parliamentary Service values. The referral that my colleague, Dr Bacon, is referring to in relation to the requirement from the presiding officers to the Parliamentary Service Commissioner is in relation to the statutory appointments
Right.
in place in the department, not departmental employees.
Right. So
There is
only the presiding officers can make a referral of statutory heads of agencies. Is that right?
Yep, in a nutshell, Senator, yes.
But essentially the process for the code of conduct remains the same, if not slightly elevated. There should be a sort of, almost a more stringent code of conduct for agency heads. Is that correct?
Senator, I can certainly comment on the code of conduct process that's in place for the department, which is established against the DPS process and procedures for considering code of conduct breaches and the application of sanctions.
Okay. So I understand...
If I could just correct, it's not that we may, we must, as per the Act, which, if you're interested in that, I'm sure Dr Bacon can describe it. So we must, you have to. In relation to a statutory appointment. It's not a can, we must.
Okay. So then, President, again, understanding everything that has been discussed at this committee and the information that you have had in the lead up to this committee and the information that we have asked for at this committee that will arrive on notice, the 100,000 or so private potentially privileged documents that were provided to a third party without potentially appropriate vetting of either the information or those who the information was provided to, do you think that this is potentially a breach of the code of conduct?
There are a number of errors in what you've just said, Senator Hume. Ms Hinchcliffe said she couldn't confirm the numbers, that you've just stated a number. That can't be confirmed. She said she could give you the size of the data. As I've said on a number of occasions today, I retain confidence in the actions of Ms Hinchcliffe and Ms Hinder.
And thank you, President, for that. Retaining confidence and reporting a breach of the code are not mutually exclusive.
I'm not sure what you... I don't understand the breach of code.
Well, I'm interested to know that. Do you think that there has been a breach of the code of conduct?
I can't answer that, Senator Hume. I don't understand what you're asking of me in relation to the last statutory appointment, which we terminated on the basis of a lack of trust and confidence. We are required under the Act to carry out a certain steps, and one of those is to consult with the APS, with the Parliamentary Services Commissioner. We did that.
So, sorry, with due respect, and I'm trying to be as delicate and as sensitive as I possibly can here, I do feel like I'm treading like an elephant on the way through.
Well, I don't think you are. It wasn't a code... we lost trust and confidence.
I understand that, yes.
And that went to a range of matters.
Which is very sensible, and I understand why that is, and we understand why we can't ask further questions about that matter. But this is another matter entirely that we're talking about today. The idea that these bulk data searches would be shared potentially with a third party, that there are some questions about the appropriateness of those third parties as to whether they should have received the information in the first place. There are questions about the way that data was accessed, whether it was done with the appropriate risk management framework around it. For me, this is concerning. The idea that there was extreme risk involved and you weren't made aware of this until after the fact. I would have thought that this would constitute further investigation as a potential breach of the code of conduct, the department's code of conduct.
When you go to the issue of extreme risk, Ms Hinchcliffe has said in her evidence she received the draft. She's well and truly covered that off. I've had a number of conversations with a very large number of conversations with Ms Hinchcliffe and Ms Hinder, and as I said in my statement today, I'm confident, but in an abundance of caution, that's why the Speaker and I have now acted and requested that data be brought back here. And we will, in the future, I think, be looking at a policy arrangement with DPS about how matters are handled into the future. That is one of the outcomes of this matter, to make sure that there is an oversight in place. That's where it's up to. But I made it clear in my opening statement, you know, that I have the confidence in the way the matters are progressing. I understand what you're saying, Senator Hume, I do.
And I suppose it's this idea that you are compelled to refer. You don't have the option. You don't feel compelled now?
No, Senator Hume, I don't.
All right.
And it's a requirement of the Act. Dr. Bacon can spell it out to you, or Dr. Banerjee. But
okay.
You know, when we explored the issues in relation to the previous secretary, there were a lot of checks and balances we had to go through, which is appropriate because, you know, you don't want perhaps political or any other matters to interfere with processes. So I think there is a proper process in relation to statutory appointments.
Okay, so I'm trying to be very cautious here, and I'm going to remain cautious. I will take this out of committee, and I will just flag now that I'm going to write to you, President, to ask you to seek advice from the Parliamentary Service Commissioner about whether the Code of Conduct has been breached. And given the gravity of this matter, rather than pursue a number of questions that we have into the night, I think that I'm going to seek an inquiry into the potential breaches of parliamentary privilege in a full review of the department's practices and policies around privilege. So on notice, I'm going to ask you to provide a list of the policies that the department has in relation to the handling of privileged matters, and that includes internal training documents, any current MOUs with third parties, and any other matters or policies or documents that you think would be helpful to an inquiry. I know that my colleagues have other questions that we will put on notice. We would expect those questions
to be answered. Rotate back to Senator McGrath for a wrap-up.
We expect those questions to be answered ahead of a separate inquiry, which I will be taking to
the questions you place on notice here come under the dates that have been already advised, which are...
I just don't want anything to be...
returned by the 28th of
I want
November.
to be very clear that there is still an expectation that those questions will be answered in full in anticipation.
Well, this is not a process where we anticipate something else that you may or may not do, Senator Hume. We have dates here for questions and responses, and the department will comply with those. Any further process that you may kick off, we'll then obviously do as it will do.
Yeah. Look, I don't think that this is a particularly controversial matter for the chamber. The idea that this potential breach of privilege has occurred should attract a full review that is outside the estimates process. So,
and that would be a matter for the committee to discuss, not in a public session, I would imagine, but at a next private meeting. Senator McGrath.
Thank you. I just want to, and this has been touched upon by a number of colleagues, I just want to go back to this report. And I think Senator Hume, I just want to, in summary, it does indicate there are issues with staff culture, that nearly a third of DPS employees reported they wanted to leave their position immediately or within the next 12 months, and of those, 42% said they were looking to move to another agency. 1 in 8 DPS employees reported having experienced bullying or harassment. 8% of participants said they'd observed a public official engaging in corruption that was higher than the APS average. That 33 staff have departed between the 1st of August and the 31st of October. And I don't really want to... I don't have the time because there's so many quotes to read out from the emails I've received. But I've got one here. I've worked at highly toxic organisations in the past, and I can say hand on heart, I've never experienced or seen any workplace like this current one. There are issues here. Do you have what is your action plan to address the concerns of staff in this building and you may wish to take that on notice. In terms of addressing those specific concerns, to make sure this can be the best one of the best workplaces in Australia.
So, Senator, you're absolutely correct. One of the focuses for the Secretary and the entire member of the executive team is to make sure that DPS is the best workplace in the parliamentary services. We are one of a number of cogs in the parliamentary services. We have had some immense feedback coming out of our staff survey, and as much as there are elements in there that we need to be able to focus on, there's also an immense amount in there that we need to be able to recognise and have celebrated, such as the 6% uptick in recommending DPS as a great place to work between last employee survey and this employee survey. Out of the APS survey last year, we put up on the department's website the survey action plan. The current survey action plan is being developed, and it's going to reflect a number of key priorities that the Secretary has already outlined and provided to the committee. One of those priorities is actually building the visibility, for instance, in relation to bullying and harassment, the focus upon the executive leadership and our leadership team, and also breaking down some of the feedback that we've received about red tape in terms of DPS decision-making processes. We've put our census results up on the website 3 months before the required reporting time, which all government agencies are required to report. We have also maintained the previous year's census results up on the website so that people can do a comparison. And in fact, we've also loaded the 2022 results as well so that people can see that change over time.
Look, Chair, I do have lots more questions, but I'm aware that the spillover was only for a couple of hours, so I'm appreciative of it, but a lot of questions will come on notice.
Thank you.
So I'd like to thank everybody.
Thank you very much, Senator McGrath. We now just have a couple of questions from Senator Whittaker.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks all for coming back to us again today. I just have a couple of questions relating to First Nations employees, if you're able to assist. So, can you outline what resources are available to First Nations staff within DPS to support and promote their careers?
Thanks,
Senator. You go, Dinks.
Jumping at the chance to answer. Great.
I'll ask Mr. Lucas to come forward to answer your question.
Excellent.
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Jason Lucas, First Assistant Secretary, Corporate Services Division. It's on that side too. So the department has worked closely with colleagues across the parliamentary service and assisted by the Parliamentary Services Indigenous and Employee Network to support First Nations staff with their parliamentary career. In terms of resources, we have an inclusion and pathway team which are available to discuss and provide guidance to our First Nations staff and to support managers in their role in fostering our First Nations staff. First Nations staff are also able to reach into the Parliamentary Services Indigenous Employee Network, PSIN, and that's an APH-wide network dedicated to supporting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff. That's open to all First Nation employees across parliamentary departments. In terms of additional support, in terms of the additional broad supports afforded to employees, and in recognition that employees may wish to celebrate and participate in culturally significant days and events which are not prescribed public holidays, they may access additional paid leave. They are able to access an additional 1 day of paid leave per calendar year to participate in NAIDOC Week activities, and the department delightfully also participates in the Indigenous Apprenticeship Program, and that's an initiative designed to enhance employment opportunities for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples throughout the APS.
Thank you. And how are DPS fostering a workplace environment that helps First Nations staff progress into leadership positions?
Sure. So we put a lot of, in addition to the sort of supports we've put around, as I just noted, we have put in place substantive effort into training and development. and that's through a variety of support mechanisms to support staff, including specific learning and development options, as well as access through the Employee Assistance Program. All our staff through DPS are required to complete the core cultural awareness training within the first 3 months of their appointment within the department, and that supports and recognises individuals as they work with and for First Nation staff. We've also got a number of diverse training options and reference materials that are available through the APS Academy, made available to all staff within the department.
Great, thank you. That's all my questions, Chair.
Great. I'd like to thank you all for coming back and spending the evening with us. We do really appreciate it. And thank you to Hansard and Broadcasting and to our Secretariat for all of their great work and support. And I will now adjourn this session and look forward to seeing you all in December. Thank you.
Thank you.